Passage 1 is adapted from humans' big brains, maybe partly due to 3 newly found genes. Passage 2 is adapted from Matt Wood. Brain size of human ancestors evolved gradually over 3 million years. Passage 1. The brains of humans are conspicuously larger than the brains of other apes, but the human-specific genetic factors responsible for the uniquely large human neocortex remains obscure. Since humans split from chimps, which have brains roughly a third of human size, the human genome has undergone roughly 15 million changes. Which of these genetic tweaks could have led to big brains? About 6 years ago, scientists in David Hostler's lab at Howard Hughes Medical Institute discovered a gene called Notch2NL. It's a relative of Notch2, a gene that scientists knew was central to early brain development. Notch2 controls vital decisions regarding when and how many neurons to make. When the Hostler team looked in the official version of the human genome at the time, version 37, so this says here, the reference version of the human genome goes through updates to more completely map out each chromosomal sequence. Notch2NL appeared to be located in chromosome 1 near a region linked to abnormal brain size. Delete a hunk of the region and brains tend to shrink. Duplicate part of it and brains tend to overgrow. We thought, oh, this is incredible, Hostler said. Notch2NL seemed to check all the boxes for a key role in human brain development. But when the team mapped Notch2NL's precise location in the genome, they discovered the gene wasn't actually in the relevant chromosomal region after all. The once promising candidate seemed to be a dud. We were downhearted, Hostler recalled. That all changed with the next official version of the human genome, version 38. In this iteration, Notch2NL was located in the crucial region, and there were 3 versions of it, Hostler exclaimed. Over the last 3 million years, his team calculated Notch2NL was repeatedly copy-pasted into the genome, what he calls a series of genetic accidents. Genetic analysis of several primate species revealed that the 3 genes exist only in humans and their recent relatives, the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, not in chimpanzees, gorillas, or orangutans. What's more, the timing of these genes' emergence matches up with the period in the fossil record where our ancestors' craniums began to enlarge. Hostler points out. Together, the results suggest that Notch2NL genes played a role in beefing up human brain size. Okay, what does passage 1 indicate is true of the human genome? It has gone through a large number of changes over time. It has nearly tripled in size in the last few million years. It contains many more genes than do the genomes of non-human primates. It retains only a few of the genes that were present in the genomes of Denisovans. Okay, so let's just read this part again. The human genome has undergone roughly 15 million changes, right, since humans split from chimps. So it has gone through a large number of changes over time, option A. Based on passage 1, what concept most likely contributed to Hostler's team's interest in Notch2NL? Similar genes often play different roles in the development of different species. A single gene typically has varying functions depending on where it is located in a genome. Genes that are near one another in a genome usually are duplicated at about the same rate. Genes that are related to one another tend to have comparable biological roles in development. So I think it's D, but let's just verify that. Because here we are saying that they were interested because it was a relative of Notch2, which was known to be crucial to central early brain development, right? So that is why D would be the right answer, that Notch2NL, because it was related to Notch2, was promising because genes that are related have comparable biological functions. We are not talking about different species here because we are looking at something exclusive to humans. Yeah, B is not relevant in this case because that comes later. Where Notch2NL is located is later. And C is also not relevant. Which choice from passage 1 provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? So this would be these lines. Lines, okay, let's just mark the options. 11 to 14, 18 to 20. 11 to 14, 18 to 20, 28, 31, 31, 35. 28, 31, 31, 35, right? So I think it's A because that's where we are talking about the relationship between notch 2 and notch 2 NL. Delete a hunk of the region and brains tend to shrink. Duplicate part of it and brains tend to overgrow. We were downhearted. That all changed when the next official version of the human genome was published. And then there were 3 versions of it. Yeah, so all of these come later. The main idea of the relationship is in option A. Okay, 24th is about passage 2. So let's read the second passage. Modern humans have brains that are more than 3 times larger than our closest living relatives, chimpanzees and bonobos. Scientists don't agree on when and how this dramatic increase took place, but new analysis of 94 hominin fossils show that average brain size increased gradually and consistently over the past 3 million years. The research published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society shows that the trend was caused primarily by evolution of larger brains within populations of individual species, but the introduction of new larger brain species and extinction of smaller brained ones also played a part. Brain size is one of the most obvious traits that makes us human. It's related to cultural complexity, language, tool making, and all these other things that make us unique, said Andrew Du, PhD, a postdoctoral scholar at the University of Chicago and first author of the study. The earliest hominins had brain sizes like chimpanzees, and they have increased dramatically since then. So it's important to understand how we got here. Du and his colleagues compared published research data on the skull volumes of 94 fossil specimens from 13 different species, beginning with the earliest unambiguous human ancestors, Australopithecus from 3.2 million years ago, to pre-modern species, including Homo erectus from 500,000 years ago, when brain size began to overlap with that of modern-day humans. The researchers saw that when the species were counted at the clade level, or groups descending from a common ancestor, the average brain size increased gradually over 3 million years. Looking more closely, the increase was driven by 3 different factors, primarily evolution of larger brain sizes within individual species, but also by the addition of new larger brain species and extinction of smaller brained ones. The study quantifies for the first time when and by how much each of these factors contributes to the clade level pattern. Du said he likens it to how a football coach might build a roster of bigger, stronger players. One way would be to make all the players hit the weight room to bulk up, but the coach could also recruit new, larger players and cut the smaller ones. Which choice from passage 2 best supports the idea that brain size research may help answer important questions in realms beyond evolutionary biology? Right. Okay. 47, 51, 52, 57. 47 to 51, 52 to 57. 58, 63, 66, 72. 58, 63, 66 to 72. Okay. So we are going beyond evolutionary studies. Average brain size increased gradually. Okay. The research shows that the trend was caused primarily by evolution of larger brains, but the introduction of new larger brain species and extinction about brain size that goes beyond evolutionary biology. These are the things that, right? We are basically looking at other things that make us unique. Yeah, so I would go with C. I'm just a little confused between B and C because in B, I'm saying that what are the causes of this increase in brain size? But yeah, I think beyond evolutionary biology is C. As used in line 53, trend most nearly means 53. The research published in the proceedings of this shows that the trend was caused primarily by evolution of larger brains. Okay, the increase in brain size, that trend we are talking about. So the progression, right? The progression, because there is a constant increase in brain size. So that's the best word. Inclination, customer approach, they don't fit the context. The main purpose of the fifth paragraph of passage 2, lines 73 to 81. This one. The researchers saw that when the species were counted at the clade level, the average brain size increased gradually over 3 million years. Looking more closely, the increase was driven by three different factors, primarily evolution of larger brains. Right. So looks at the factors that could account for this change. Define a term that Du and his team introduced. Indicate the original objective of Du's team's research. Summarize the conclusions that Du and his team reached. Describe the methodologies used in Du's team. So it's C, right? It's a summary of the conclusions that they reached. They were able to show that brain size increased gradually over 3 million years. Yeah, and they also saw that the increase was driven by these factors, right? So this is basically what they came to realize after the study. In the context of passage 2, the references of a football coach mainly serves to create a humorous image of the way Du and his team conducted their analysis, establish an analogy that illustrates the pattern Du and his team observed in their study, suggest that Du's team findings may offer unexpected insights into everyday situations, convey that the primary factor Du's team identified had some control over the other factors they studied. So this is B, right? It was simply an analogy to make the subject more approachable, to say that, these were the ways that the human brain increased in size over millennia. And that is comparable to how a football coach might train a team of big, strong players, right? So that's an analogy. Which choice best describes a key difference between the passages? Passage 1 refers only to data derived from computer simulations, while passage 2 refers to data derived from simulations as well as from fossils. Passage 1 addresses genetic analysis of the brains of human ancestors only, while passage 2 addresses genetic analysis of the brains of multiple primate species. So this is definitely out. Passage 1 limits its discussion to evolutionary changes in recent human history, while Passage 2 considers changes occurring over millennia. Passage 1 focuses on small-scale genetic changes that influenced brain evolution, while Passage 2 focuses on the influence of large-scale population-level changes. So I like D, right? Because it's true that Passage 1 is focused primarily on the genetic changes, right, that could have driven the increase in brain size, while passage 2 is looking at the evolutionary sort of big picture of what happened at the population level for the brain size to increase. Both passages state that modern human brain is about 3 times larger than the brains of I think chimpanzees is something that they both talk about, right? That's the common factor. So chimps are mentioned here, and chimps are also mentioned. Yeah, they're also mentioned here. So the three genes, which means that that there is definitely an increase. Yeah, so it is chimps. As used in line 58, passage 2 obvious is closest in meaning to which word used in passage 1? Okay. Passage 2. Okay, line 58, obvious. Brain size is one of the most obvious traits that make us human. One of the most obvious traits. Okay. So we have conspicuous, vital, relevant, and repeated. 1, 13, 25, 34. Just let me write that. 1, 13, 25, 34. Conspicuously larger. Okay. 13. Vital decisions. 25. relevant, and 34. Repeatedly, right? It was repeatedly, yeah. So I think it's option A, right? Because when we talk about the the most obvious traits, it's basically because you can actually see, it's very conspicuous that the brain size of humans is larger than the brain size of chimps and other primates. So I like A. Vital is important, so that's not relevant to something that's obvious. Similarly, relevant and repeatedly don't fit, right? So it will be